Most people completely misunderstand what it means when a police dog hits. They think it's just a signal, a guess, or maybe even something officers can ignore. But in reality, that moment can instantly change your legal situation in ways you don't see coming. And what you say or don't say in the next few seconds can either protect you or quietly give everything away. Let me be clear from the start. This is not about arguing with police. It's not about resisting. And it's definitely not about trying to outsmart a K9 unit. This is about understanding what that alert legally triggers and how to respond in a way that protects your rights without making your situation worse. When a police dog hits, it means the dog has indicated the presence of something it's trained to detect, usually narcotics. In court, that alert is often treated as probable cause. That means officers may now have legal justification to search your vehicle without asking for your consent. And that's the moment where most people make a critical mistake. The biggest mistake. They start talking. They try to explain, deny, justify, or guess what the dog could have smelled. And every word they say becomes part of the officer's report. Every sentence becomes something that can be used to build a narrative against them later. Here's what you need to understand. The dog's alert is not something you can debate on the roadside. You're not going to win that argument in the moment. Courts don't expect you to challenge the dog. They expect officers to rely on it. So trying to argue about the dog's accuracy right there only puts you in a worse position. So what should you say? The safest, most effective response is simple and controlled. You say, "I do not consent to any searches." That's it. Calm, clear, and direct. You're not refusing physically. You're not interfering. You're simply making your legal position clear. This phrase matters because even though a dog alert can create probable cause, officers sometimes still rely on your words to strengthen their case. If you start explaining or apologizing, it can look like consciousness of guilt. If you stay silent except for clearly stating your lack of consent, you avoid giving them extra ammunition. Now here's where things get more serious. Once the dog alerts, officers may begin searching immediately. At that point, many people panic. They raise their voice, they question everything, or they try to stop the search verbally. That reaction almost always makes things worse. You have to understand the difference between verbal clarity and emotional reaction. Saying, "I do not consent to any searches," is controlled. Repeating it aggressively, arguing, or interfering is not. Tone matters just as much as content, especially on body cam audio. Another mistake people make is trying to explain what might have triggered the dog. They say things like, "Maybe it's from a friend," or "I was around someone who had something." Those statements might feel harmless, but legally, they can be interpreted as admissions. Let's talk about silence, because silence is powerful, but only when used correctly. Total silence without a clear statement of non-consent can be ambiguous. Officers can still proceed, and later it may not be clear whether you objected. That's why a short, clear statement is better than saying nothing at all. Timing is critical here. You don't wait 5 minutes. You don't wait until the search is halfway done. You say it early, calmly, and clearly. That way, it becomes part of the record from the beginning. Now, here's something most people don't realize. K9 alerts are often challenged later in court, not on the roadside. Lawyers look at training records, handler behavior, and the timing of the alert. But none of that matters if you've already made damaging statements during the stop. This is why your goal is not to win the moment. Your goal is to protect the future case. Everything you say should be measured against one question. How will this sound when it's replayed in court? Let's address another common reaction. People ask, "Why are you searching my car?" Or "What did the dog detect?" These questions feel reasonable, but they don't stop the search. Instead, they create more dialogue, more audio, and more chances for misinterpretation. The better approach is controlled, minimal speech. You acknowledge commands, you remain calm, and you avoid unnecessary conversation. You are not there to investigate the officer. You are there to avoid harming your own legal position. Your body language also matters more than you think. If you step out when told, keep your hands visible, and avoid sudden movements, You create a calm and cooperative image on body cam. That image can be just as important as your words. On the other hand, if you start pacing, gesturing, or moving unpredictably, it can be interpreted as agitation or even resistance. Remember, officers don't just write reports, they describe behavior. And those descriptions carry weight. Another key point is understanding that consent and probable cause are different. Even if officers believe they have probable cause because of the dog, your lack of consent still matters legally. It preserves your ability to challenge the search later. Many people think once the dog alerts, it's over. That's not entirely true. There are still legal questions that can be raised later. But those opportunities shrink quickly if you talk too much or act unpredictably during the stop. Let's talk about tone again, because it's often overlooked. A calm, steady voice sounds cooperative on audio. A raised or rushed voice sounds defensive, even if your words are polite. Bodycam microphones don't capture your intentions. They capture your sound. One more mistake to avoid is trying to be overly friendly or joking about the situation. Humor doesn't translate well in high-stress recordings. What feels like light conversation in the moment can sound suspicious or inappropriate later. If you're asked questions beyond basic identification, you are not required to provide explanations about where you've been or what you've done. The more you talk, the more you risk saying something that can be taken out of context. At the same time, this is not about being confrontational. You're not refusing commands. You're not interfering with the search. You're simply controlling your words and your behavior. Think of it this way. The officer is building a report. The camera is building a record. And your job is to make sure that record does not work against you. When the dog hits, the situation feels intense. It feels like everything is happening fast. But in reality, those moments slow down later in court. Every second gets replayed. Every word gets analyzed. That's why the simplest strategy is often the most effective. Stay calm. Keep your movements controlled. Clearly state, "I do not consent to any searches." And then limit what you say after that. You're not trying to stop the officer in that moment. You're protecting yourself for what comes next. Because the real battle doesn't happen on the roadside. It happens later, when lawyers, prosecutors, and judges review everything that was said and done. And in that review, the smallest details can make the biggest difference. A single sentence can change how the entire situation is interpreted. A single mistake can strengthen a case against you. So remember this. When the police dog hits, don't panic. Don't argue. Don't explain. Stay calm, stay clear, and say the one thing that protects you. I do not consent to any searches. If you understand that moment, you're already ahead of most people. And that awareness can make all the difference when it matters most.